There are moments that money cannot explain. Not $700 million. Not the largest contract ever signed in the history of professional sports. Not the financial architecture of a deal so staggering that it redefined what the word investment means inside a professional sports organization. None of it, not a single dollar of it, could have produced what happened in that Dodgers clubhouse when Mookie Betts walked in carrying something that stopped Shohei Ohtani completely in his tracks. The smile that followed has been described by everyone who witnessed it as something they had never seen before. Not the polite smile of a professional navigating a public moment. Not the composed, camera-aware expression of a man who understands that every facial movement he makes in a Dodgers uniform will be photographed, analyzed, and distributed to a global audience within seconds. Not the smile of a $700 million superstar performing warmth for the benefit of the people watching. Something real. Something that bypassed every layer of professional composure and public persona that Ohtani has constructed across years of living under the most intense scrutiny in the sport. Something that arrived before he could manage it, before the part of him that is always aware of the cameras could intercept it and decide whether to let it through. The whole clubhouse saw it. Teammates who have spent an entire season watching Ohtani perform impossible things on a baseball field stopped what they were doing because what was happening in front of them was, in its own way, more remarkable than any home run they had witnessed him hit. Shohei Ohtani, the most disciplined, most controlled, most internally fortified competitor in professional baseball, had surrendered. Completely. Genuinely. To a gift from Mookie Betts. The baseball world has been trying to understand what that smile meant ever since. To understand the smile, you have to understand the gift. And to understand the gift, you have to understand the specific relationship between two men who were brought together by a roster construction decision but have built something that transcends the professional context that created it. Mookie Betts did not give Ohtani something expensive. He did not match the financial scale of the world Ohtani inhabits, the world of $700 million contracts and global endorsement deals and the specific material abundance that accompanies being the most commercially valuable athlete in a sport watched by hundreds of millions of people. He gave him something that cannot be purchased. Something that required a different kind of investment, the investment of attention. Of genuine observation. Of the specific intimacy that develops between two people who have shared a clubhouse, a dugout, a competitive journey, and the thousand small moments that accumulate between games and between seasons into something that looks, from the outside, like friendship but feels, from the inside, like something closer to brotherhood. Betts had been watching. Not watching in the way that teammates casually observe each other, not the peripheral awareness of men sharing a professional space. Watching in the way that people watch when they genuinely care about what they see. Tracking the details. Noticing the preferences. Registering the moments when Ohtani, always composed, always managed, always presenting the version of himself that the public and professional context requires, allowed something personal to show through. And then he acted on what he saw. The gift was specific in a way that generic gifts never are. It was the specificity that produced the smile, the realization, arriving in real time for Ohtani, that someone had paid close enough attention to know something about him that he had never announced, never performed, never displayed for the benefit of an audience. That Betts had seen past the $700 million and the global celebrity and the historic contract and the carefully maintained public persona and found something genuine underneath all of it. Something worth seeing. Worth acknowledging. Worth wrapping up and carrying into a clubhouse. That realization is what bypassed the composure. Baseball has seen many versions of Shohei Ohtani's smile. There is the post-home run smile, brief, controlled, directed at the dugout before it disappears behind the professional mask of a man already thinking about the next at-bat. There is the press conference smile, warm but measured, deployed with the awareness of someone who knows that every expression he makes in a media setting carries weight and consequence. There is the teammate smile, genuine but bounded, the natural warmth of a person who genuinely likes the people around him expressed within the limits of a professional environment. The smile that Betts' gift produced was none of these. Witnesses in that clubhouse, players who have spent an entire season in proximity to Ohtani, who have seen every version of his emotional range in competitive and non-competitive settings, described it with a consistency that makes the account credible beyond any individual testimony. They used words that do not normally attach to Ohtani descriptions. Unguarded. Surprised. Young, that specific word, young, came from more than one person, as though what the smile revealed was not just happiness but the person underneath the historic career. The person who existed before the $700 million and the global fame and the weight of being the standard against which all of baseball measures itself. In that moment, in the clubhouse, with Betts' gift in his hands and the smile already past the point where composure could reclaim it, Ohtani looked like what he actually is beneath everything that the sport has built around him. A person. With specific preferences and private joys and the particular vulnerability of genuine surprise. A human being who can be reached, completely and without warning, by the right gesture from the right person at the right moment. The whole of MLB has been in awe of what that smile revealed. Not because it changed what they knew about Ohtani's ability, nothing changes that. But because it reminded everyone watching that the greatest player in the sport is not the monument that the contract and the statistics and the global mythology have constructed around him. He is someone who can be surprised by a friend's gift. And the surprise can reach all the way to his face before he has a chance to manage it. That is the shocking truth behind the smile. The public understanding of the Betts-Ohtani dynamic is built primarily on what is visible, the on-field combination of two elite players competing alongside each other, the clubhouse footage that cameras occasionally capture, the post-game interviews where both men speak about each other with the professional warmth that teammates display when they genuinely like each other but are also aware of the media context surrounding every word. What the cameras almost never catch is the relationship that exists beneath that visible layer. The early arrivals when only a few people are in the facility and the conversations happen without an audience. The specific humor that has developed between them, the kind of humor that only emerges between people who trust each other enough to be genuinely funny rather than professionally pleasant. The moments when competition produces something between them that is deeper than professional respect, a shared understanding of what it costs to perform at this level, day after day, under this much pressure and scrutiny. Betts arrived in Los Angeles already carrying the identity of a champion, a man who has competed at the highest level and won and understands the specific culture that winning requires. Ohtani arrived carrying everything that his career and his contract represented, the expectations, the pressure, the weight of being the person the organization had bet its competitive future on in the most literal financial sense. What grew between them was not the manufactured camaraderie of a marketing partnership or the surface warmth of colleagues who happened to share a workplace. It was genuine. Forged in the specific crucible of a season where both men were asked to carry enormous weight and chose, at some point, to carry some of it together. Betts' gift did not come from nowhere. It came from months of paying attention. Of caring enough to look past the public version of Ohtani and see what the private version actually valued. And Ohtani's smile was the response of a person who had not fully realized, until that moment, how clearly he had been seen. The story of the gift and the smile has traveled through the baseball world with a speed that reflects something the sport does not often encounter at this scale. Genuine human warmth. Professional baseball operates within a culture that values toughness. Emotional reserve. The specific kind of controlled intensity that produces performance under pressure. Players are not celebrated for vulnerability. They are celebrated for the management of it, for the ability to absorb difficulty and pressure and personal complexity without allowing any of it to interfere with what happens between the white lines. Ohtani has embodied that culture at its highest possible level. His composure is legendary. His management of public emotion is so complete that analysts who cover him regularly have described him as uniquely difficult to read, a player who gives you the performance but protects the person behind it with a discipline that borders on architectural. The smile broke that architecture. Just for a moment. Just long enough for the entire clubhouse to see what was behind it. And what was behind it was something that the sport recognized immediately as rare. A superstar who had been genuinely surprised by a friend. A competitor of historic proportions who could be reached, completely, without warning, past all the professional fortification, by the right human gesture. MLB cannot stop talking about it because it answered a question the sport had been asking about Ohtani since he arrived. Not the baseball questions, those have been answered repeatedly and definitively on fields across both leagues. The human question. The one that $700 million and 50 home run seasons and the greatest two-way career in the history of the sport cannot answer on their own. Who is he when the uniform comes off? Betts answered it with a gift. Ohtani answered it with a smile. And everyone who saw both is still thinking about what they saw. Inside the Dodgers organization, the moment has been received as something more than a heartwarming story for the media cycle. It has been received as a signal. A reminder, arriving at a point in the season when the organization has needed reminding, of what holds this roster together beneath the statistics and the contracts and the competitive machinery that championship contention requires. The Dodgers were built around talent. Assembled through financial investment and organizational strategy and the analytical precision that modern roster construction demands. All of that is real. All of it matters. None of it is sufficient on its own. What holds a roster together through the difficulty of a long season, through losing streaks and organizational friction and the accumulated weight of expectations that championship-level talent carries, is not talent. It is connection. The specific, human, impossible to manufacture bond between people who have chosen to trust each other inside the pressure of genuine competition. Betts' gift was a demonstration of that connection. And Ohtani's smile was confirmation that it exists, real and deep and capable of reaching past every professional layer to the person underneath. For a team that has been navigating weeks of internal difficulty, that confirmation matters. Not because it resolves the structural issues that have been generating conflict and tension, but because it reminds every person in that clubhouse, and every person watching from outside it, that the foundation beneath the conflict is genuine. These are not just teammates. These are people who see each other. Who pay attention. Who care enough about what they see to act on it. That foundation does not fix everything. But it makes everything fixable. $700 million bought the Dodgers the greatest player in baseball. It did not buy the smile. That required something different. Something that Mookie Betts understood without being told, the specific understanding that comes from paying real attention to a real person over a real period of time. From deciding that the human being behind the historic contract was worth seeing clearly and worth acknowledging specifically. The gift was small by the standards of the world Ohtani inhabits. The smile it produced was enormous by the standards of the world that actually matters. The whole of MLB is in awe. Not of the home runs this time. Not of the contract. Not of the two-way brilliance that has redefined what the sport believes is possible. In awe of a smile. Unguarded, genuine, and completely beyond the reach of $700 million to produce or manage or explain. Mookie Betts saw Shohei Ohtani. Really saw him. And gave him something that proved it. The smile said everything else.